She is really interesting. She's kind of different than a lot of other deities, just in the way that she doesn't really have much myth or story surrounding her. She kind of just represents the hearth itself.
Yeah. And also there were not many altars. Like when we were traveling
Yeah.
Greece and visiting sacred sites, there's not like temples to Hestia. I guess there's altars, like ancient
Right,
altars, but there's
right.
not like big temples because everyone would honor her in the home where the hearth is. Welcome to Conversations with the Planets with Lori Kaufman and Alicia Cielle Heiser, a podcast that roots the wisdom of the stars into our lived experiences here on Earth and weaves the power of diverse healing modalities together with astrology. I'm Alicia Cielle Heiser, an astrologer, herbalist, and witch living in Oregon on Kalapuya land, and I offer astrology consultations and teachings aimed at helping you honor your most authentic self and trust your intuition.
I'm Lori Kaufman, an astrologer, tarot reader, writer, and teacher. I co-lead the Asteroid Special Interest Research Group for NCGR, an astrology organization, and I offer all different sorts of readings, online and in person.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Conversations with the Planets. And today we'll be talking about a number of different hearth goddesses, particularly Vesta and Hestia, and then also Brigid. So if you have never worked with the asteroids before, we have an Asteroids 101 video, and we encourage you to pause this and go listen to that so that you know how to look up asteroids in your chart and how to interpret them and their significance. But we'll just be talking about the mythology and lore surrounding these goddesses, as well as how they can show up when they're prominent in a birth chart. Um, yeah. So what would you
Yeah.
say about these goddesses, Lori?
Yeah, so many things. Well, do we want to start by doing a bit of a story retelling of
Yeah.
Vesta and Hestia, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe start with Hestia because she's the Greek version of Vesta, and then Vesta's Roman. So Hestia is a little earlier. And we also both co-chair the NCGR Asteroid Special Interest Research Group, which meets the second Tuesday of every month for folks who want to join us. And you can Google Asteroid Surge and find our Patreon to be
Yes,
notified.
that
But
can
we were
happen.
just talking actually about Rhea and Kronos and the mythology of,
Mhm.
Rhea and Kronos are these ancient Titan gods who had a number of babies, and Kronos had a prophecy that one of his children was going to overthrow him. And so every time Rhea had a baby, Kronos would eat them until she had Zeus. And then she gave Kronos a swaddled rock and he ate it, and she ferried Zeus off. And then when he grew up, he overthrew Kronos. But Hestia is the oldest of the
Mhm.
Olympians, and she was the first of all of the children to be eaten because you always go to the hearth first.
Mhm.
And then she's also the youngest because she was the last one to be spit up.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was the first swallowed and the first reborn. So
Mm-hmm.
she's the oldest and the youngest in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of at the same time. And she is really interesting. She's kind of different than a lot of other deities, just in the way that she doesn't really have much myth or story surrounding her. She kind of just represents the hearth itself.
Yeah. And also there were not many altars. Like when we were traveling
Yeah.
Greece and visiting sacred sites, there's not like temples to Hestia. I guess there's altars, like ancient
Right,
altars, but there's
right.
not like big temples because everyone would honor her in the home where the hearth is. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so she's such an interesting deity in that sense, especially when you look into her more Roman stories.
mm-hmm.
The Romans had a fire in the middle of the city that the Vestal Virgins, this group of women who were chosen when they were very, very young children, they basically had the honor, if you were chosen, you had
Mm-hmm.
this honor to keep the fire alive, and you were one of the deities or the goddesses or the women or the
Priestesses. Yeah.
priestesses, whatever you want to call them, who got to help keep the fire. And so they would have one at a time come in and tend to the flame.
Hmm.
And these goddesses were seen as like, they had such a prestigious role in keeping that fire alive and yeah, tending to that
Yeah.
flame, which is that, that hearth, that heat and heart space.
Hmm. That like
Um,
eternal, like very Leo energy too, this eternal flame,
yeah,
eternal fire. And
fixed
the
fire. Yeah.
yeah, the Vestal virgins were pretty elevated in Roman society. There
Mhm.
were like select seats for them in the Colosseum. They were powerful for women in such a paternalistic patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Um, and they just played an incredibly important role because Vesta's eternal flame was so significant to the stability and longevity of Rome. And so it was integral that they kept that flame alive.
Mhm.
And it was also they were virgins. They were
Right.
forced to stay virgin to the point where if they broke that vow of virginity, they were buried alive.
Yes.
Which also, Demetra George traces the roots back with Vesta and Hestia of before, the classic Roman times that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Hestia was more associated with a form of reproduction where the goddesses or the priestesses associated with Hestia and Vesta would be in these like kind of orgy situations. And
Yeah.
then whoever, like when they got pregnant, that child that came from that woman was the next leader. And so then
Yeah.
as you get to Rome, where it's actually passed down through like the male line as far as who's in
Mhm.
charge, that's one reason why they were forced to stay virgins, is because if they ever did bear an heir, it would be a huge threat to the ruler of Rome at that time, which also,
Right.
there's so much evocative material there of women losing our power to
Right.
patriarchal societies and losing the power of, like as a new mother myself, being able to make a baby and bring life into this world is so empowering. And there's so much tied into why we, oppress and harm women to try to keep us small, to keep that power away and take that power for like patriarchy,
Right.
essentially.
Right. And yeah, I mean, two things I really want to add here is for one, the flame in Rome specifically, it was seen as like the worst terrible omen that could ever happen. Basically, if that flame were to ever go out, it was
Mm-hmm.
basically like if the flame went out, then Rome would fall.
Mm.
Is that how they saw it? And so the priestesses actually were treated pretty well and
Mm-hmm.
were placed on a bit of a pedestal because it was so important that they didn't let this flame die. And the second thing I really want to dive into here is the changing of the word virgin.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's like my favorite thing to talk about when I talk about Vesta or Hestia and her whole story, because the Vestal virgins, back then the word virgin basically meant onto yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or being able to choose and have autonomy over yourself. And so the Christianization of Rome is kind of when the word virgin ended up becoming morphed and changed and turned into this whole idea of sustaining from sex and abstinence and everything,
Mm-hmm.
because that word did not mean that back in those days. It actually really was a word of autonomy and sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And it really meant like you got to choose what happened to you. You got to choose your fate. You got to choose what
Mm-hmm.
happened with your body. And so it's just such a different
Yeah,
energy than
very
it is
different
now.
concept of virginity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so for folks who have prominent Hestias or Vestas in their
Mhm.
chart, there can be a theme of it being very important that you're able to choose your own destiny, that you belong to yourself. Like, even if
Yeah.
you are in partnership or like not a virgin,
Mhm.
you may still have that like what is like sacred that always belongs to you inside of yourself, that you're not going to ever share
Yeah.
with another or give up to another, no matter how much you may love them.
Yeah, yeah. And I like to see her too, like when you look at the asteroid Vesta in your birth chart or Hestia, um, either. They're the same. They manifest the same way. But I tend to see it as like, where do you crave solitude,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, this might be an area of life where you just need extra time by yourself. So like I have Vesta on my descendant, and codependent relationships always like crash my life apart.
Mm-hmm.
um, so like, it's really important that I have a lot of time, space, and energy in my life from relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, it's really, I've always felt like I partner really well with people. Like, having a lot of partnerships on a lot of projects has always been really good for me, but also like having my own business at the end of the day, or doing things in my own way, has always been really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to see it like that. Like, if you have Vesta in the ninth house, you might like to travel alone. Um, if you have Vesta in the fourth house, you might live alone, or you
Mm-hmm.
might want to live alone. Vesta in the fifth house might be that you want to make your creative projects alone, or you need a lot of alone time to create.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth house is also dating, so it probably will manifest very similar to mine in the seventh,
Mm-hmm.
or on the descendant. But it also could just mean that you don't want children, or if you have children, you need a lot of space or time
Yeah.
from
Or
them.
maybe you're a single parent or a stay-at-home parent
Mhm.
who spends a lot of time alone with your children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, it could absolutely go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would disagree slightly with Hestia and Vesta being the
Yeah.
same. Like they're very, very similar. And we actually talked
Yeah,
about
they do have
this
slight differences.
in our episode with Diana Rose Harper about Juno and Hera, which comes out. If you're listening to this as like our podcast, then it's already come out. And if you're listening to this, we're also live on TikTok right now.
Yes.
And so it comes out tomorrow for you guys. So you can go follow Conversations with the Planets on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and listen to that episode.
Mhm.
But we talk about how Juno and Hera, many astrologers really view them as the same goddess.
Mhm.
And to me, Hestia and Vesta are very, very similar, but just the prominence that the Vestal virgins played
Yeah,
in
in
Rome, like
Rome.
there is that additional, and then like the punishment that they also received for not honoring their virginity.
Mhm.
Um, those sorts of interpretations I would bring in more with wherever Vesta is in your chart, and I wouldn't
Yeah,
necessarily associate those with Hestia in the same way.
that's fair.
But if you work with them, it's
Mhm.
interchangeable. That also works. There's no right or wrong
Yeah.
answers there with that.
Yeah,
But
Vesta is so prominent as being one of the dwarf planets, or one of the first goddesses discovered.
yeah, that as well. She's one of the four asteroid
Yeah,
goddesses,
right.
right?
So she is
So
the fourth ever asteroid
yeah.
discovered, and she is a minor planetary body.
Mhm.
She's
She
considered a
was a
dwarf
planet
planet.
for a
Yeah, she was a
while,
planet for 50
which listen to
years.
our Astronomy of Asteroids episode, which should
Mhm.
come out at some point in July. But
Yeah, yeah. So she's really extra important in a lot of those ways. Whereas I almost see Hestia as like a reiteration. Like,
mhm.
if you also have her.
Yeah, it like
Um,
re-emphasizes the themes. Hestia also
yeah.
just feels cozier. Like it's more to me, it's like
Yeah.
the cozy hearth,
More,
like
yeah,
the home, because that's also we haven't even
more
really dug
homey.
into like the significance of the hearth, right? As the
Right.
place at the
Yeah.
center of the home, the place where everyone goes to gather, the place that especially like even like when I studied abroad in Chile, most people don't have central heat in their homes in Chile, but in the south of
Mhm.
Chile, it's like the Pacific Northwest, it gets quite cold. And
Mhm.
so you still have like your hearth, and that is where you go to warm yourself in your
Yeah.
home. It's this gathering place, it's this like eternal generative fire. And like we said, most people in ancient Greece, like they wouldn't go to the temple to honor Hestia. They would go to their altar, their hearth in their home to honor her.
Yeah.
And like Jason Hawley, his whole school is the Hestia Hermes school.
Mhm.
He's working with Hestia all the time. Is like she's the field, she's the place that you go where all other creation is able to come from, and that's what the hearth
Yeah.
is as well.
Yeah. And it's also like, I like to see her as like, what is your like sovereign flame? Like, what is the
Mm-hmm.
heart inside of you? Like,
Yeah.
what brings you your fire, basically?
Uh-huh.
Um, because, if you have Vesta prominent, if she's conjunct your sun, moon, rising, or angles or whatever,
or ascendant
or a chart ruler, yeah, whatever, then maybe sitting on that, like, what is your flame? What brings you those energies or those feelings, or like what kind of puts you into that fiery flow state space? Because for you, that's going to be extra important that you spend extra time doing that. And even like Vesta is actually less than a degree from my sun in my solar return chart this year. So yeah, so I look at her through timing too, and or if you're having like a Vesta transit or something like that. But I've been really vibing with her all year this year because she's in my solar return chart so closely. She's like baked into my year's energy. And I do feel like I've been, I just finished writing the Asteroid Encyclopedia. So I really have been sitting with such a project of heart for so long.
Like heart-centered work.
Yeah. So it like made so much sense to see her in my solar return chart. So I think things like that can be so beautifully important as well.
And, when you said sovereignty, and I'd also put like self-determination in there, like those are revisiting our conversation we were just saying about virginity. Like those are words I feel like that really come through, like being able to be sovereign to yourself and have your like sense of self-determination, whether or not you have sex or have had sex, right? That's different.
Right.
So
yeah, but also like I do want to point out that Vesta does often show up prominent in the charts of nuns.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can be literal. And if it's in your fifth house, it might be literal because the fifth house is
the house of sex. Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, like there are moments in time where that can actually be her meaning.
Yeah. And then, Demetra talks in her Asteroid Goddesses book also of the role that priestesses associated with Hestia or with Vesta played anciently of like sacred prostitution, or like men coming back from war and having this form of sacred sex with priestesses of these goddesses to like cleanse themselves and purify themselves to be able to return to society. So it's also, I feel like a number of different like atypical relationships with sex can show up with a prominent Vesta or Hestia, where like maybe like sex workers, absolutely that could be like a Hestia Vesta signification, or people who just don't have sex in the way that society expects you to. Whatever that may mean.
Or somebody, I forget who said this, but somebody I was talking to once mentioned that she thought it could be, ping-ponging extremes, which like I talk about all the time, but like it could be moments of like, and this is something that I've actually kind of experienced where it's like, I re-enter the dating world and then I like decide just kidding, and then I like separate myself from it for years sometimes. So it could be like moments of like promiscuity or even just like putting yourself out there, and then ping-ponging to the other extreme where you might go months, even years of celibacy, or just like not talking to anybody, or just like needing long periods of time by yourself. So that can definitely show up. It's like a big Vesta theme as well.
And it would be interesting to look up, if you are someone who has that experience, where Hestia and Vesta are by transit during those different periods, and if they're activating. Like it would be interesting for you to look back on periods and see if they've activated you in certain ways.
Yeah, because I've definitely like gone sometimes years at a time between relationships where I'm just like, don't talk to me.
Well, even right now you're kind of in that like it's also similar to like 12th house energy, right? And then you have that, was it Vesta in your solar return chart is the prominent one? So exactly.
Well, I didn't look where Hestia was in my solar return chart, so
really interesting.
It's possible she was prominent too, because actually in October I know she was in Sagittarius, so it's very possible she's a slower moving one. She probably was also in Aquarius around my birthday too.
Interesting. Should we talk about Brigid a bit?
Yeah, let's bring Brigid in here.
Yeah, what would you say?
Oh man. So yeah, actually quick funny story about Brigid. I didn't include her in my book. I didn't realize she had an asteroid.
Yeah, like you looked her up
I've
and didn't find
searched for
her.
her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have searched for her for years, in fact. And I thought it was so weird that she didn't have an asteroid. But honestly, most of the Celtic ones don't. Like, I have tried and tried again to find more.
Well, I wonder how many of them are spelled really weird. Because I feel like Celtic
Yeah.
spelling is just
Well,
so
and Brigid's
wonky.
spelled wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, not
exactly.
not wrong, but it's like one of her
That's how you
more.
missed it, was the
Yeah,
spelling was
exactly.
weird.
Like
Yeah.
her, it's spelled as one of her more ancient names. Um, but I've tried so many things with so many of the Celtic ones, and I've like looked up different like forums and
Uh-huh.
stuff. Like there's just like not much variety there. And I think a big part of that actually is because most of them are discovered by like Americans or Germans or
There's just not a lot of Celts
yeah, exactly.
discovering
Like
asteroids.
right. Like when you look at who's discovering them, they often have a name that matches the region of which they're naming it after.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they have a great NASA program there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and just really quickly, because people may be like trying to look up Brigid, let's share her number. And then also
Yeah.
Vesta is 4.
Yeah.
And then Hestia is
46.
number 46. And then Brigid is
450.
Lori is just an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
You're like, what asteroid is this? And she just like knows all the numbers.
My brain has just
asteroid numbers.
just asteroid numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Brigetta, or I don't, sorry, I like butcher
Yeah.
pronunciation
We
always.
also
I'm
don't
I'm
speak
so
Gaelic, so sorry.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm a big reader and I'm not like a big listener, I guess, of these stories. So I feel like I pronounce everything wrong. But yeah, it's like Brigetta. But anyway, yeah, so I've searched for her for so many years, and I am actually going to Scotland and in a few months, 2 months, and I was taking a walk with my friend that I'm going with, and she was talking about so I do a goddess of the month on my nails. I currently have Rhea and Kronos eating his babies. As one does. And she was like, "Oh, you should get Brigid on your nails when we go to Scotland." And I was like, "Well, I've only been getting goddesses who I actually like either have prominent in my chart or that I have by transit or I've just been connecting with or something, but I've only been getting goddesses who have asteroids." And because Brigid, I thought didn't have an asteroid, I had never really connected with her. So I was like, yeah, maybe, I'll figure that one out in 2 months or whatever. But then it wouldn't I couldn't drop it. I just kept thinking like, how did Brigid not have an asteroid? And maybe I missed it. So I went back in and I Googled it one last time and it literally just came up in Google. It was like, oh yeah, she has an asteroid. Like here it is. And first thing that popped up, and I just sat there in shock. Like, did I switch timelines? Like, I swear she did not.
Like she is
millions
now
of times.
ready to be discovered by Lori.
Exactly.
She was earlier. She's like, no, you're not ready for me. You're not gonna find me.
And that happens so frequently. Like when they don't want to be seen, when they're not ready to be seen, they won't.
Literally.
And so, I didn't know much about her. I don't know much about that whole region of myth in general, just because none of them have asteroids. So I just haven't like put a lot of time and energy into studying them. And so I decided to, and I made myself a promise I wouldn't add anything else to the book, but Brigid was important. So I made an exception. So I went in and I added her entry. And I was just honestly shocked because I recently got into poetry and I've really been using poetry as a way to kind of, first of all, deal with the fact that the book is finished. And that was really hard for me, to be honest. I started writing this book in 2019 and I committed to it as a full-time thing on June 1st last year. So, it's been a whole year of like pouring my whole self into this book full time, and having it finished was like difficult for me. I really didn't handle it well. And so it was just like funny because I kept feeling like I needed something else to write. And the thing I kept going back to is this dream I had a really long time ago and a reading from a medium actually a long time ago. They both told me that I was going to write a book of poetry of retellings of the myths. And I was like, okay, well, I don't write poetry and like that's not something I do, but I do really feel drawn to retelling the stories of these myths because every goddess is just a tragedy and they all had terrible stories. And
Yeah.
all I wanted to do while writing the book was to retell their stories, but I couldn't. I was writing a resource. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write poetry. I'm going to write these stories in a way that like, they can be fiction, they can be whatever I want them to be, but I'm going to give the goddess their voice back. I'm going to make, an outlet for them. And so I started writing these poems. And when I found that, first of all, Brigid is basically like so similar to Hestia in the sense that she's also a hearth goddess, and they also had the same version of what the Romans did with the Vestal Virgins and like all these priestesses who kept this flame alive. Like it's basically the same story, but she was a goddess that was invoked when people needed a creative spark. And she was a goddess of poetry and she invoked all these things. And I was like, I have her prominent. Like I am 100% sure while reading her story, she is conjunct something. Like I knew it and I looked her up. She was 2 degrees from my sun and 1 degree from my Mercury. She was almost exactly between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And she was actually almost a degree and a half from
and your Mercury rules your third house of writing.
Right. And my IC. Yeah. And so I kind of just sat there frozen, like, there she is. Like, there's where this is coming
like
from.
now that you're writing the poetry, she's
right.
like, okay, now you may see me.
She's like, now you can find me.
Yeah.
As they do. And so I thought that was striking, first of all, but then I actually went back and I was like, okay, well, where is she right now? Where was she on the day that I wrote my first poem? And where was she in my solar return chart? Because my birthday was actually the day that I went to a poetry share for the first time. And that poetry share is actually now today the reason that I started writing these poems. So, and it would be baked into my solar return chart. So I looked that up. She was exactly conjunct the moon and Uranus in my solar return chart. She was actually right in between them, and they were only 1.5 degrees away from each other anyway. The moon is not only my chart ruler, but the ascendant of my solar return chart was almost exactly my ascendant. So the moon not only rules my chart, but ruled that chart. And there she was, conjunct the moon. She was exactly conjunct my south node on the day that I wrote the first poem in Gemini in my 12th house, which, I struggle with the nodes a little bit. I've been very clear about that, but I thought that was really interesting. And then she just moved into Cancer, and I've been kind of finalizing what a book would look like for all these poems I've now written about these goddesses, and I've been talking about publishing it. And she will probably be on my ascendant when I publish it.
That's very cool.
And I think that's so interesting.
And also co-present with Jupiter by transit, who rules your 9th house of
publishing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and Venus, she was conjunct Venus when I found her. Yeah. Or no, transit Venus. Okay, cool. Very cool. Yeah, because she had just moved into Cancer. Right? Okay. Yeah. I mean, it trines my Venus by sign, not by degree, but yeah, also cute. But yeah, I thought that was just so interesting. Yeah. Just how literal this has been showing up.
Yeah, seriously. And it's just like, because there's like, what, at this point, over 30,000 named asteroids, right? Like, and there's like, what, like 1 million actual asteroids, just not all have been discovered and named. And so it's like overwhelming when you're like, okay, so many of these are prominent in my chart. Where do I even start? But sometimes even if you just feel intuitively pulled, like Lori's like, okay, maybe I'll look Brigid up again. Or you're like, oh, this goddess comes up in a song or this deity or whatever. And then you feel intuitively pulled to it and you look it up. It's like, it doesn't have to be this like serious mathematical thing. The asteroids are so fated, and they, even when you seek them out, sometimes they won't show themselves until you're really living out their mythology, like Lori
Right.
with the poetry.
Right.
So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
amazing.
I was fully convinced. I just like somehow woke up in a different timeline when I found Brigid there.
Like the Nelson Mandela effect.
Literally.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I am 100% sure I've looked for her like 50 times.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why? How? There's no possible way. She just
So
exists
funny.
now and comes up the first thing you Google when you Google her. Like, that's not right. So it just was so funny to me how easy she was to be found when it was time to find her. And I think that's like the point we keep trying to make is like sometimes they're not ready.
Yeah.
And when they are ready, they will make it known.
They will, sometimes very loudly.
They will appear in your life. And yeah, and I've been kind of seeing Brigid the same way.
Like interpreting her kind of similarly to Hestia.
Yeah, very, very
but
similar.
then that poetry
she's
piece, and then like calling on her for a creative spark is like a very evocative.
That's a very different feeling. So she definitely has more of a creative space and more of a like, this is who, you know, if you're trying to invoke some kind of creative practice, especially around writing or poetry or spoken word or songs, even, like she would be a really good one to call in and to kind of ask for that spark.
It's very cool. And Brigid's also a Catholic saint. So there's also this like very interesting, like this Celtic goddess that is also a Catholic saint. So yeah, there's a lot. I feel like there's rabbit holes we could go down there.
Yeah, they got very conflated at some point in history.
Yeah, and interesting because the Catholic Church did go back a few years ago and like remove a lot of saints that don't have evidence that they actually were like humans who existed, and Brigid somehow survived that. So that's also really cool.
Yeah, really fascinating.
I also just kind of wanted to talk about like hearth space in general, and I feel like this is a good space to talk about like regular ritual and more like third house type energy of
the house of the gods.
Yeah. And like if you don't already, like this is just an invitation for folks to like create a little altar in your house. And you can even be something where you just go and just like sit at it for like a few minutes every day, or put out a little cup of water for your ancestors, or put out a rose for Venus, or just like having that time, especially like those of us who aren't like traditionally religious, but like you still yearn for like spiritual connection and connection with that which is bigger, and like meditative quiet time, but you're not going to go like sit down and pray to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, or whatever. It's like having an altar and creating a kind of like symbolic hearth space, because like also working with your oven and cooking can be very beautiful. That's most true of us for our hearth, but also just like having an altar space and going and like tending to the field that you walk through every day, and like centering your energy and centering your intentions and reminding yourself that like there's more than just you and your ego. Like we're held and supported and connected to all that is. So yeah, just an invitation for folks to like tend to their field by working with Hestia and Vesta and Brigid as well.
Yeah, and calling in that kind of energy of like, what is gonna light you up? What is going to bring you that sense of excitement and sovereignty? And like, I feel like this has actually been a really big theme I've been noticing in my readings right now. So I'll kind of pull this in, but I feel like every single reading I've had lately has been like a woman whose whole life revolves around just like driving her kids around, or like taking care of the home, the family, and all these things, but they have been really letting go of their own needs or their own wants, or
classic like mother struggles.
Right, of course, which like makes a lot of sense. But some of them, like their kids are older, and so it's like you can be yourself again, like,
and it's better for your kids no matter how old they are. My daughter is 7 months old. Like you have to nourish yourself too. Like you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. Right. And that has been the conversation I feel like I've had 10,000 times in the past few weeks, is just like, hey, this is really important that you take care of yourself and that you make sure you're finding a really good balance. And and find a hobby, like find something that you love to pour into and still continue to do no matter what.
Yeah. Even if it's
And
1 hour once a week.
right,
Like,
right.
Or
Because things get busy and
yeah.
like that's fine too, but you can't you continue to pour from an empty cup all the time.
Yeah.
It's going to eventually get exhausting.
And also to your point of like working with these energies to and these goddesses to, work with what lights you up, that also can require bravery of that might not be what the other people in your life want you to be doing. And that goes back to that like virginity, sovereignty, self-determination conversation of, like there's like if you're a mother or a caregiver, like we do have to tend to other people. We can't just do what we want all the time, but still being really honest with yourself of like what truly is that like hearth fire inside of you that like keeps you going and lights you up and gives you life and energy, and honoring that, even if like like I'll use you as an example, like you're an acrobat and you were a circus performer and your family is like, that's weird, and you're like, I don't care, I'm gonna be a circus performer, right? So it's like honoring the like weird or non-conventional or taboo things can be really important.
Well, and like, just to very, very quickly, we've had this conversation, but like to pull in like fallen planets too, like, because I have a fallen Mars. So sometimes people think the way that I work out is weird. So, like, so sometimes it's just like societally strange, like whatever it is that you have decided to do. So sometimes like you're gonna have that kind of adversity if you have unhappy placements. And Vesta and like some of these hearth goddesses can like almost like reiterate some of that, and it can like pull in that sense of like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna get made fun of for this thing that I really like, but I'm gonna do it anyway because this is the thing that keeps my fire going, right? And when you think about that, the Vestal Virgins keeping the flame alive as a metaphor for like your own inner fire. Don't let your fire go out. You can't do that.
A horrible omen. Don't do it.
Rome will fall.
Well, and also back to the altar work, like even just lighting a little candle, especially with this fire energy, right? And just like candle gazing, or even like, if you light a candle to have just in your home while you're doing your stuff, but just like taking an extra 15 seconds while you light that candle to call in Hestia and Vesta and Brigid and honor them and set a field. Like this work can be very, very like short. It's just the remembering and the coming back like over and over and over again, just coming back to yourself and the fact that we're held in this broader, spiritual field. We're not alone in any of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, just I love to, I mean, I'm ruled by the moon, so if you're Cancer rising, like this might be especially prominent for you, but every new moon, like new moons are really good for grounding and like planting the seeds and setting intention or manifesting. So every new moon, like no matter what, and if you're a day or two off in either direction, doesn't matter, like, if that's going to be your reason for giving up, like do it late, do it early, it's fine. But I always will sit down and like write a few things that I'm trying to call into my life. And, if I have extra time, sometimes I will sit and like visualize and like get really specific. And sometimes I don't have time. So I will just write down like success and abundance, or like just write a few buzzwords down, and then I put it under a candle and I let that little candle go. And I'll choose a candle depending on like whatever color it means, like green is good for money, pink is good for love, etc. So I light those candles every month, and that lately has kind of felt like a more like Vesta practice rather than just like a new moon practice. And sometimes like you can call in the goddess or talk to them or whatever, but you can also just be like, hey, this is what I'm like setting my intentions for this month, so here's a candle to do something in the physical to represent that emotional space.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Should we wrap up the podcast recording and do a little Q&A with the folks who are live with us on TikTok?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
great.
Well, to the folks listening to the recording of this, and well, to everyone, honestly, thanks for like tuning in, joining, exploring these energies with us. Please comment and let us know if any of these deities are prominent in your chart, if any of this was resonant for you, if you have any stories to share. You can also reach out to us on Instagram at conversationswplanets. We love hearing from folks and hearing how these asteroids show up. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any personal stories to share or thoughts and reflections about what we discussed in this episode, please comment down below or reach out to us on Instagram. And please come follow us on Instagram at conversationswplanets, where we share forecasts and updates about the astrological movements happening in the sky, as well as updates about our episodes. The link to our Instagram is in the show notes down below.